ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the latest edition of the World Report. I'm Scott Crowfoot. We'd like to welcome Bermuda to our growing list of viewers of the World Report. On today's show, a new report says 62 million U.S. residents speak a language other than English at home. That's 1 out of 5. ISIS continues to grow in strength and numbers as our silly coalition does little. However, good news from the State Department, they're using Twitter, Facebook, and hashtags to stop the Islamic militants. I'm sure they're scared. Leon Panetta is trashing Obama while Joe is just being Joe. The vice president is forced to apologize to world leaders almost every day. Our history segment reveals the obscure individual that saved Israel from destruction. And now to our top stories. Open borders, incompetence, and allowing deadly diseases into the country. A Spanish nurse contracts Ebola as EU leaders say an outbreak is unavoidable. Meanwhile, the President and the U.S. Surgeon General assure us there's nothing to see here. The World Report senior advisor and economics blogger for USA Today Online, Maury Beschloss, joins us. Maury, have you ever seen such gross incompetence at every single level from the top on down? No matter who you talk to, no matter who the spokesperson is, Surgeon General, IRS, the presidency, it doesn't matter. It's unbelievable.
I'll go you one further step. You know, I'm a businessman. I've been a business manager, chief executive. Actually, I've celebrated my 58th anniversary in my industry, which is the energy development industry and plumbing, heating, cooling. I have never met such an incompetent at a low-level job in any of the companies that I was responsible for. That's where I put this man.
So it goes beyond just the presidency.
Yes.
You're talking about thousands of bureaucrats running all kinds of agencies in this country.
I think, look, there's been an ongoing discussion we've been having. Is this a conspiracy? Is this incompetence? Is this some sinister objective that we can't figure out what it is? I think I'll tell you what the characteristics are. Anger and hate is a very definite part of it. Secondly, here's a man that really thinks he is some great national leader when his competence level is about as low as anybody I've ever had as a junior executive.
Well, and you can't point to one thing in the entire history that he's done. I mean, he's never ran a business. He's never ran a company. He's never ran a government. He's never done anything. The only thing he seems to be able to run is his mouth, and I don't mean that
but the point is, we know nothing about his background. I'm not going to go back about the birth thing. That's over with. It's a waste of time to talk about it. Whether he was born in Indonesia, whether he was born in Kenya, whether he was born in Hawaii, it doesn't matter. It's beside the point. I have observed this man. It's been my job over the years as I matured in my positions to get to understand people. The only thing I can figure out is to point a couple things that told me how dangerous this man was. One of the first things he ever did when he came to the White House, the bust of Winston Churchill, the greatest Western leader of the Second War, the one, if he hadn't kept the British people together, would have collapsed and gone along just like France. He had that bust delivered to the British Embassy with a direct demand that they ship it out of the country. Did anybody say anything about it? That was a very interesting sign. Somebody should have stood up and said, wait a second, these are our allies. That bust represents the dominance of the West in standing up to Hitler during the Second War. Nobody said a word.
So you mentioned incompetence, anger, maybe there's a sinister
hate.
angle to this. I'm in the medical field.
Yes.
What competent person, what caring, compassionate person would bring Ebola into the country? Now, I know what they're going to say on the other side is, well, who are we not to treat these people? But why don't we treat them there? Why wouldn't we send medical teams there? These are nurses and doctors that are coming down with this. And they're telling us there's nothing to worry about. These are the most protected people in the world against this.
You know what the bottom line is? The job of the president, first and foremost, is to protect the American people to the distance of everyone else. He is bringing the American people down to a level where that we are subject to disease, militancy, anything that could make us weaker. Ironically, this country is so strong economically, and I go back to my energy development through hydraulic fracturing. I mean, that came on, really, it was around for many years, but it was made cost effective in the last 5 or 6 years.
We'll get to that.
No,
in
but
the
I'm
energy
saying
segment.
he's taken credit for the economy is decent in spite of him, not because of him.
When you've got a record 62 million people, 1 out of 5 Americans, U.S. residents, does not speak fluent English, you've got a breakdown of culture here. It's very hard to repair.
Well, I think that you got to understand some statistics. Do you know that legally we bring in 1,200,000 people every year? That goes back. You know, we had we stopped taking any kind of refugees or immigrants in 1924 because of the Red Scare, and that lasted until after the Second War, when we took pity on a lot of people. And also we needed the Nazi war criminals to help us develop our basic nuclear capability. But the point is, now we're wide open. To me, a 2-year-old child could tell you, stop the borders. I mean, put up a 50-foot fence if necessary. Don't let anybody else in anymore. What's so hard about that?
Well, do you realize that if the trend were that the Hispanics voted Republican, there would have been a fence built 35 years ago?
I would say it's not only that. I think most immigrants tend to vote Democrat because that's where they get the handout.
And that's why you have the open border. I mean, it's that simple. The Republicans want the cheap labor, and the Democrats want the votes and the power.
I think you just made a very interesting statement. You're right. The Republicans want the cheap labor. And as an economist, I can tell you one of the reasons why wages are lower now, when basically projected for 2% inflation over the last 12 years, they're lower now than they were 12 years ago.
So the Democrats complain about income inequality, everything's about justice and inequality. But you're right, they say income inequality, but when you bring in millions of people from the third world that don't have any education and can't speak the language, of course you're going to be lowering wages and lowering everybody else's cost of living, expectations of lifestyle.
You know, it's interesting. We're in a disinflationary environment as we speak right now, which means it's not a deflationary like it was during the great financial recession, but it's not going anywhere. The wages actually are, productivity is up. Part of that is because of technology. But by and large, the average worker today is making less than he did in the 90s. And as you said, the government, in order not to get these people too upset and antagonized and voting against them, are giving them handouts the likes of which this country's never seen.
So we have the first beheading in the United States, and claimed by a self-proclaimed Islamic militant wannabe. You'd think that would be headlines on every newspaper.
It amazed me.
And every media broadcast in the country. That's a big story.
Oh,
That's never happened here. First of all, they said that Ebola was not going to come here. And they also told us ISIS would never come here. They're already here.
You know, I'm surprised they didn't even arrest this executive who shot the guy. And I'm sorry that he didn't kill him, but he just shot him and wounded him. You know, at least the Second Amendment was kept intact, that he was carrying a gun to work, which probably somebody would have sued him for doing that. But the point is, you're absolutely right. This man, this creature, I don't even call him a human being, this creature that killed that woman by beheading her on the premises of this food management operation. And somehow I didn't see any major outcry about it. It was just like another news story. I think this country has been hit so hard in negative things over the last 6 years.
And we've been barraged on a daily basis that you can't even keep up with it anymore.
There's an immunity, and again, I always tend to bring up my youth in Germany. You know, when Hitler first came in, he did one thing, and then he did another thing, and he burned down the Reichstag, and then he killed off all his opposition. By the time they came to vote whether they wanted to keep him or not, and that would, by the way, have to be a free election. In 1936, 3 years after he came into power, 90% of the German people voted for the Fuhrer.
Well, and you also have a Chicago background, so you have that unique perspective as well. Saul Alinsky's stomping grounds, and his basic premise was overwhelm and overflood the system with as much as you can to create chaos. That's pretty much what's happening on a daily basis.
Well, there's no question. I think the Axelrod managed campaign was a brilliant campaign of putting over a non-entity, an incompetent oaf into the White House, who is now doing everything he can to make things worse. Now, at the late stage of his, he's got a couple more years to go. Now, I think it was the NBC Wall Street Journal poll said that almost 60% of the people wish they hadn't voted for him.
That doesn't make me feel any better.
Crying over spilt milk.
And Romney can blame himself. He ran a horrible campaign.
Romney was a weakling.
Great businessman. And that's what we need as a business person.
As far as a manager,
he was a weak politician.
Yes. I think this guy ever got angry in his whole life at anything.
No, he still doesn't. We need to step aside for a brief moment. We'll return with our economic update, the American energy segment, global outlook, political insider, and the moment in history. If you want to watch the entire show, or if you just want to catch one of our segments, it's simple and free. Just log on to our website, theworldreport.org. When you're there, remember to like us, recommend us, and leave comments. For the latest news updates, visit newsmax.com or watch Newsmax TV on DirecTV, channel 349, and Dish, channel 223. We'll be right back.